Okay, so I want to put this in abstract terms because I have unlocked every single great areas what there are is to my life, whether it comes to wealth, freedom, social status. I had basically most of it, and obviously I am not the most successful person out there, but I want to tell you guys about this philosophy that will help you understand how I have got there, so that hopefully you can apply the same principles and you will reach there as well. And let me break it to you guys, because I want you to understand that having social status and freedom boils down to two things. So anybody who says, "Oh, I am, I'm free," or if you guys seen the movies, "Oh, like I finally felt freedom," or "I'm unchained," or "I've escaped the matrix," and whatever not, but what most people associate themselves with when it comes to freedom is basically having control to do whatever you want and to be wherever you want to be anytime. And so if you put that on in modern terms, that basically means financial capacity. So the ability that you can travel and expend or expense, or in the sense of spend wherever you want, to travel anywhere, to the most luxury locations, to buy the most beautiful things, and to experience perhaps the wonders of the world. That is financial capacity. And for many people, that is literally their arbitrary dream. Everybody would love to achieve freedom, and freedom in the sense of financial capacity. And once you reach this stage, freedom, once you reach financial capacity, this is the mind-blowing contradiction. And a lot of people actually get depressed. Lack of purpose. Fulfillment. And perhaps even meaning. And so this is the misconception, is because I want you guys to understand that if you want to become successful or millionaire, or be part of that 0.01%, you need to detach yourself from the idea of becoming free, because that is not your end goal. Freedom is a result of your accomplishment. It's like a reward of you pursuing for the higher good, that you get yourself rewarded with freedom. Because I've been in that situation. I've had financial capacities to travel around the world. Not to travel around the world, but to travel to various places. I had financial capacity to experience the most exotic things, and I've been able to see or experience things that what a lot of people can't really experience, and that has led me to become essentially free. And I can tell you one thing for sure: it has not provided me with the best sense of happiness and enjoyment, because you gotta understand, what does happiness really mean? And a lot of these things, and a lot of people ask this question, does money make you happy? And I don't want to talk about that cliche question, but happiness in the hedonistic sense talks about this financial capacity, but that's only temporary. Because if you think about it, you travel around the world, or you go for some expensive dinner, that stuff is only temporary. Like literally moments or hours later, like you're back to status quo, you're back to your normal condition, where you're like, oh shit. And then the problem is, then you lead into this loophole where you just keep on going. Like you keep spending, you keep traveling, you keep going to these exotic places, and you'll be in this endless loophole that just goes round and round and around. And I've seen people, and I know people myself, who basically fell for this trap. I like to call it a trap. And it's because they associate their pursuit or their life vision based on this, based on freedom. Remember, and freedom is number one. Two things, freedom. And so that is a problem, because I don't want you guys to end up in this loophole. Even if you aren't there yet, I can tell you one thing for sure, it's not the most enjoyable thing. Once you reach that stage where you can always eat the best stuff and you can always travel and see the most, lucrative things, like, this loophole doesn't make you happy. Like, I can confirm this with many, many metrics, but this loophole does not make you happy. And so the question beholds, what do I do instead, and what is the alternative? But before I get there, I want you guys to understand the second thing, because these two things are the only two things that people, which I myself call as an illusion, that people associate themselves with their purpose in life. And it's not. It's a huge hoax. It's not true. So the first thing is freedom. The second thing is social status. Because if you ask yourself, what does a man, or essentially a woman, really want in life, it's literally just freedom and social status. And very often you can use them interchangeably, and very often they yield the same thing. And I'll explain you guys in just a moment now. But what is social status? So there's this particular part at the backside of our brain that constantly measures and compares ourselves to other people. And that is evolutionary, that is instinct, and something that we basically have no control over. So my point is, social status is an instinctively an instinctive marker that associates you to other people. And that's basically how we see ourselves in terms of the hierarchies we establish in society. And that's where we kind of put our place in where we currently are. And very often, especially in today's world, that's one of the only metric what people literally measure themselves with, which you guys can see on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and perhaps other social media platforms. Social status is, if not sometimes even bigger than freedom, because once you have financial capacity, then you're most likely after this, or the other way around. You get famous first and eventually the financial capacity happens second. So what is social status? Now, social status is measured on a couple of metrics. In modern terms, it could be measured by your financial capacities and what I mentioned earlier regarding why it's interchangeable. And the second thing would be popularity. Now, popularity would mean for us Gen Zs, followers, likes, or how much engagement you get on your social media accounts. Back then, popularity was, if you're recognized for, I don't know, some innovation, or you got a Nobel Prize for, accomplishing, some difficult task. Like, back then, popularity is a noble act. Like, sorry to say, because I'm a Gen Z, popularity in the modern sense has just been misconceptualized to a point that a lot of people just misuse it. And the issue with popularity, and also I would say the biggest difference between now and then, is that popularity is created now. Like, literally you can become popular by just becoming a content influencer, for becoming stupid, for saying the weirdest things, to become like radically feminist, or to have some radical viewpoints. Like, you can be popular now by creating it for yourself. Back then, in my personal opinion, you earned popularity. You earned it for solving complex tasks, you earned it for innovating some remarkable, product. Like, back then, popularity is literally earned. Now, I don't want to elaborate on this too much, but these are the two biggest markers for what people represent their pursuit of life in. So this is basically what people chase after, and I have been after this for such a long time. And yes, it makes you feel great, and yes, there comes benefits. You become popular, and your entire brain is designed with dopamine, serotonin to reward these things. So yes, these are for your brain happy things. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't go after these two. I'm saying is, what you should really go after is the higher person. And this is very often mentioned in Friedrich Nietzsche, or in Buddha, for Buddhist or Hinduism, they mention the idea of the higher person, or essentially nirvana. And nirvana, in my personal translation, is once you as an individual have overcome this freedom into social status. And I assume, as a viewer watching this video for so long, I assume that you have either one or the other already, or you might have none. But the point is that in order to reach this nirvana, you gotta understand these two markers first. And before you understand these two markers first, you have to reach there. So you have to reach the financial capacity. You need to reach the financial resources, and you also need to be able to reach that social status. So you gotta be able to be recognized or be popular to understand how it works, if that makes sense. And so once you have reached nirvana, the higher person, this is where the reverse happens. You have to be able to let go of the abstract concept of what freedom means. You have to let go of what it means, and you gotta stop chasing the abstract meaning of freedom, and you have to let go of social status. And now social status is, again, in my opinion, perhaps the more difficult part, because this is often very closely associated with your identity. And neuropsychologically speaking, letting go of your identity is one of the hardest things to do, because your hardware, your brain, is literally programmed to have an identity. And so not having an identity can be detrimental at times. And perhaps if you're somebody who doesn't have an identity, then you understand that having one is very, very important. And so, but that's not my point. My point is, you're not supposed to not have an identity at all. My point is, your identity shouldn't be fixated or fixed to a particular materialistic subject, to some title, or to some identification of a group or whatever. So it shouldn't be fixed. And Bruce Lee, if you don't know Bruce Lee, for the Gen Zs, is basically some Chinese kung fu dude back in the 70s, 80s. He was a great actor, and he used to talk about this as well. And he used to say that your identity should be something like water. So your identity shouldn't be, like fixated the whole time. You can be a river, you can go upstream, water can be a glass of water, you can be a bottle of water, you can be a pool. My point is, you gotta be like water. Sometimes you can, flow upstream, sometimes you can flow downstream. Like, the point is, you shouldn't go against the current. So you shouldn't go against water. You shouldn't, be some you gotta be like water, essentially. You gotta be flexible enough to be able to dynamically bend and essentially follow the flow. But not follow the flow in the idea of let go of your decision making, and I'll just let life just hit on me, and I become and do whatever I want based on what life offers to me. No, that's not the idea. The idea of follow the flow, in my eyes, follow the flow, is letting go of the identity of a fixated identity. And so once you have achieved these two things, these two markers, you gotta start letting go of these two things, and then you should be on the search of nirvana. Because nirvana, and I'll explain this in the next video, is the ultimate purpose and perhaps the highest possible sense of consciousness for you as a person.